Yeah? Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining this panel discussion. My name is Athanasios Katsikidis, columnist at Kathimerini newspaper in Greece. So, for the next 20 minutes, we are going to discuss about reassessing partnerships in an era of mistrust, the West and the Middle East, including Turkey, and also we are going to comment about the power dynamics of the era because we are having all this situation with the Gulf crisis, the war in Iran, and the fragmentation in a way of Lebanon. So I'm going to introduce you the two panelists of today's speech. So Mr. Mohamed Amersi, the chairman of the Amersi Foundation. Welcome, Mr. Amersi. And also Ms. Elizabeth Kendall, president of Girton College at the University of Cambridge. Welcome, Ms. Kendall. So I would like to initiate this panel discussion with a question to Mr. Amersi. So, Mr. Amersi, the relations between the West and the Arab world are often described as being at a turning point, in a sense. So, from your perspective, what has changed most in the relationship over the past decade?
Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So I think that a number of things have happened in the last decade. First of all, let me say that I have had the occasion to live in Saudi Arabia for 6 years. I have had the occasion of living in the UAE for almost 14 years. I was probably the first British citizen given a golden visa for the UAE. So my relationships go quite a long way with the Gulf states. I'm also now a Turkish citizen, and originally I'm from Iran. So now I'm spending most of my time through my foundation working on deconflicting the Middle East, if I can use that phrase. Now, I think first of all you have to understand that the Middle East is divided into the Arabs. It is divided within the Arabs, it is the Gulf states. Then you have Iraq. You have the Levant, which is mainly Jordan and Lebanon. And then you have the non-Arab states in the Middle East, that is Iran, Turkey, and Israel. So when we talk about the Middle East, we talk about a large section of people that have got fairly diverging origins, diverging objectives and strategies. I think that there are 3 or 4 themes that I would like to address today. The first one is the future of the GCC. Now, this may sound controversial to most of you, but I believe that the GCC as a functioning unit is broken. Can it be completely repaired? I'm not sure it can be. And the highlights of that are the UAE deciding to leave OPEC, which is a very significant decision that was taken by the UAE in the last month. The second thing is the different ways in which the GCC has objected to the behavior of the United States and Israel for the Middle East, and the very different way or the different lens within which the GCC look at Iran. And if I can talk a little bit more about the fragmentation, I could say I'm not a genius, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a crystal ball gazer, but if I have to predict that in the next 10 years or so, Oman and Qatar are more likely to drift towards Iran because they share a geography, they share oil and gas fields and proximity and cultural alignment. I think that there is a possibility that UAE and Bahrain will drift towards Israel and the United States. And I also believe that Saudi Arabia will pursue its independent track alongside Pakistan and Turkey and eventually Egypt. And the key for the Western powers is going to be whether they can infuse an arrangement, I call it a non-aggression pact, amongst the GCC states, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, and of course Israel has to be somehow included in that, where each agrees not to attack the other. Whether this can be done in a short time, a long time, I don't know, but it is certainly an objective that people have to work towards, because without this, it's not going to happen. The second question relates to the old Palestinian statehood. If this issue is not addressed in a powerful in a final way soon, then we will have this to be a constant sense of irritation. And I can very well see from discussions with my Israeli counterparts and friends, of which I have a few, that Israel is going to move such that it will push all the Gaza Arabs into the Sinai, and it will push all the West Bank Arabs into Jordan. And so there will be no formal state of Israel that will exist. At least this is the planning in the minds of some people. Now, what will the Arab world do to that in case if that is the objective that Israel decides to pursue with the complicity of United States? I don't know, but it is certainly a risk that has been factored into the business minds as well as political minds, where the future of Jordan is potentially at stake. Because imagine a Jordan in which 65% of the people have Palestinian origin and only 35% are Jordanians. Is Jordan capable of surviving under that scenario or not? Then we can touch very quickly, and please stop me if I'm overdoing my time. We can touch quickly on Iran. Iran is 100 million people. Iran is made up of 8 or 9 different ethnic minorities, including the Arabs, the Baloch, the Turkmens, the Azeris. So it's a very diversified people, but when it comes to national identity and national survival, they are largely united. And so to break up Iran, it's not going to happen so easily. Iran is a society in which there is a deep base of industrial manufacturing, scientific know-how, and whether they are nuclear now or whether they will become nuclear in a few years' time, I think it's just a completely moot question. I think that as long as Israel remains the only nuclear hegemon in the region, to counterweight that, either Iran or somebody in a situation where Iran shares that knowledge with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, with UAE, or whoever, is going to definitely become a counterweight to Israel. I've spoken to my friends in the US State Department, to the UK Foreign Office, and clearly for them, a nuclear Iran is out of question, but for them also, the hegemony that Israel has from nuclear prowess has to be protected at any cost. I think that this is a dynamic that will change, that will have to change to ensure that we have a balance of power situation. We have India balancing Pakistan. We have the Europeans as well as the United States balancing Russia. And there will need to be some positioning in the Asia region, because at the moment it's only China and North Korea that have nuclear capacity. So Japan and South Korea will have to energize their programs. But let me stop there.
Yeah, Mr. Messi, before delving deeper into the power dynamics of the area, I would like to ask something to Ms. Kendall, because I know that you are studying the power dynamics, the situation in the Middle East and also the Gulf. And we have seen that the Arab world has undergone a significant economic and social transformation the last at least 10 to 15 years. So what developments do you think that the West, meaning the policymakers and the institutions, is beginning nowadays to understand better about what's happening in the Arab world that it had 10 years ago?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm absolutely thrilled to be in Slemani. This is a huge question. And in fact, I'm not even sure about the basis on which it relies, which is what have we learnt, what have we in the West learnt over the past decade of transformation? Have we learnt anything? I feel like there's a lot that we ought to have learned and that might seem obvious to many of the experts in this room, but perhaps it's not being reflected in how our policymakers are reacting themselves. One of the major lessons, I would say, that perhaps is beginning to be learned, at the very least it's beginning to be obvious, is that we need to listen more. And we need to listen to a variety of different perspectives, and in particular, we need to listen to the region and to voices in the region who know the region. I don't think we're very good at that. I'll give you an example. During the Arab Spring, the so-called Arab Spring, I spent a lot of time in Sana'a in Yemen and also in Cairo. And the way it was being reported in our embassy, as well as in our press and our media, was very much, this is a surge of activity in favor of shifting towards liberal democracy. And of course it is, if you're talking to people who are out protesting, who speak English, and who are willing to speak to you, then that is the view you will get. But even if all 1 million protesters, for example, in Tahrir Square, thought like that, that still meant that there were 83 million whose views we didn't know. And I don't feel that we're very good at hearing things that we may not want to hear. This has never been more obvious than today with the situation we find ourselves in the Strait of Hormuz.
Even though the challenges that you are referring to, like the Gulf crisis, the war in Iran, the fragmentation of Lebanon, the situation in Yemen, and now we are in Suleimaniya, I heard before that nowadays there are $22 billion into projects. In addition, another $2 billion that are planning to invest. So we are seeing a lot of investments taking place. Do you see any effective cooperation between the West and the region, meaning Iraq, the Kurdish region? If someone wants to invest, where should they invest, except of energy, because we know the area only about the energy resources. But what about innovation? What about technology?
So I'm glad you asked this question. I obviously, from my perspective, place an enormous value on education. And I think we've heard many times today from Befal Talabani, from Mr. David Olu, about the real value of human capital and the need to invest in excellence amongst that human capital, not just the 2% that someone spoke about. But I feel like we often think short term and we think about quick wins and we hope that an investment gives a quick return and that you get in early and you have an advantage. But thinking long term, where can we build the most durable and the most productive partnerships and relationships? I truly believe that that is through education, research, innovation, collaboration, digital advancement, perhaps centers of excellence. And that requires a much more long-term thinking than many of our governments in the West are able to do, because these kinds of investments are always seen as a nice to have, something that's a bolt-on. Number one is risk and security and military collaboration. Number two is economic investment. And then a nice thing on the side is partnerships, culture, education.
I see. Mr. Amersi, well, the Western governments often talk about shared values while investors focus on business opportunities. Of course, you know a lot about business and business with the Arab world. What is the biggest misconception Western investors still have about doing business with the Arab world and specifically with Iraq and the Kurdish region?
Thank you very much. So let me make 3 or 4 points. I think that just as we are going through a regional transformation, I think we are also going through a massive economic transformation. AI is now on us, but AI is very much in its infancy. And this, in a way, creates a position of leveling the playing field between those that are focused on it and those that can very quickly focus on it. So if I was advising the Kurdish government here, I would say that, look, you need to create incentives where your young people are going to become job creators and not job seekers, number one. Number two, you're going to create institutions of higher learning here so that you do not have the export drain of your young people going to chase studies in United States or Europe or whatever. You find people to come here, stay here, and help build a new Iraq and a new KRG. So this depends on looking at how the economic transformation is changed. This is now, the world is now not going to focus anymore on an oil and gas economy. In 10 years' time, because of environmental pressures, etc., the model will change. And if Iraq and KRG does not evolve with this changing model, they will be definitely left behind. So I think some serious thinking has to be done in creating centers of higher education, centers of technology, bringing in the talent. I know my friend from the AUIS, he is in the audience here. He and I had dinner a couple of nights back. He's the president of the AUIS. And already they have started looking at programs here to help young people understand better innovation, to help them incubate new businesses. And this is definitely the way forward, that there has to be an absolute shift towards focusing on AI and new economies of tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Kendall, you are representing one of the most exceptional universities, University of Cambridge. So can Iraq and the Kurdish region become, let's say, a business hub, meaning educational hub, technological hub of the Arab world?
Yes. There we go. I
Smart
think
choice.
all the potential is there. The ingredients are there. Even today, just walking around, I've chatted to so many people, it's obvious that this is an ambitious place. It's full of talent. It has clear plans, strong principles. Now, that doesn't mean it's inevitable, of course, because you also need a whole bunch of other things to make those former qualities work. And those other things are good governance. We heard about that, and Volker in particular stressed it. You need legitimacy, you need to build public trust. You probably need a region that collaborates together. And I think we often undervalue the effort that we could put into aligning regional actors to point in the same direction, rather than everyone pursuing their own selfish interests. But all of the material is there, and I would be strongly in favor. I think this isn't a one-way process. You know, we, at a place like Cambridge University, or at Oxford, my other place, would benefit enormously from building research collaborations, for building joint projects, of figuring out where our minds can meet and how they can be more productive together. This is about us learning from you as much as the other way around.
Yeah. Mr. Amersi, are the Western businesses fully aware of the opportunities of the region?
So I think that that model is shifting also. If I look at myself, 20 years ago, the West treated Middle East as a source of petrodollars, and that they were only good at collecting money and not giving back. Today, when you look at the diversification strategy, especially of the Gulf states, they are equally at home housing universities from China, think tanks from Russia, and they have decided that they want to build themselves. They want to educate their people. If you look at the program of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the ruler of Dubai, announced that he is going to spend money to create at least 1 million programmers who are going to be focused in the AI space. Now, Would you have heard that 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Absolutely impossible. So now what is going to happen for the Gulf states is they're going to say that the money that we have made from our petrodollars, we now want to become as self-sufficient, as self-reliant as possible. And we want to export know-how, we want to export talent. We cannot forever be importing this because we have the money, we have the brains, we have the ambition, and we have the relationships. So why should we not be doing it here?
Yeah, and also I would like to add something because usually Iran is underrepresented in different panels and lobbying areas, etc. So do you think today Iran is still a key player, a business player in the region?
So Iran has been sanctioned for 47 years. Before the sanctions were imposed on Russia because of its invasion of Ukraine, it was the most sanctioned society in the world. Not only did it survive, but in some views it thrived under pressure. And if you look at, and I go there frequently, and if I have to compare the literacy rate there, if I have to compare the number of women that are part of government, that are allowed to work, that form part of the education curriculum, the gender balance is better, far better than what you would ever find in any Western society or any Arab world. For what they have achieved, and with so much pressure, I think that if now the world decides to lift the sanctions, to allow them to become a responsible member of the international community, this can become an absolute dynamo, an absolute powerhouse. There are professors in the US, Pape at Chicago, Jeffrey Sachs in New York, and many others who have spent time with the Iranian people and with Iran and understand that this could be hugely, hugely potential in terms of helping not only the Gulf states, but also for all its region. So we just need to now find a new equilibrium if we can. What does Iran have to do in return for that? They have to stop criticizing the state of Israel. They have to stop questioning the state of Israel. They have to definitely have a non-aggression pact with the Gulf states, and they should not interfere in the domestic policies of Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, or Yemen. If this deal can be done where the sanctions are lifted, no interference, we will support you. I think the world will see a very different world and a very different Middle East.
You see, Ms. Kendall, if I'm not mistaken, it was an Economist headline, head title, by the title, The Age of Disruption. So I'm going to add the fragmentation of the Arab world, specifically in some states like Lebanon. So is it possible, is it feasible to see an Arab world, including Iran, cooperating together to create, to establish a more peaceful, a more business-friendly world?
Ooh. Yeah. Look, I'm not averse to dreams, but this is quite a big dream. I'd love to say, yes, isn't it great? We're all going to live together in peace. But I think it's highly unlikely for quite some time. I do think, however, that we do have an opportunity to start trying to shift the narrative away from just the language of crisis and focus minds more on the language of opportunity. That's already helpful.
So, sorry for interrupting you. So are you foreseeing a more disruptive, fragmented Arab world?
In the short term, yes.
Okay. Mr. Amersi, your comment on this?
Yes, I think that until the equilibrium is found, we're going to see, and my colleague is right here, we're going to see disruption. But I think that every disruption should result in a positive outcome, and it is for the bigger states, the United States, China, Russia, Europe, to all forge a better Middle East, rather than play the traditional divide and rule game that they have. And then it's very important to recognize that in the Middle East today, you have countries that are the haves and the countries that are the have-nots. The haves are largely the Gulf states. And if they want to secure their own future, their own stability for their children and their grandchildren, they have to support the have-not states. And by doing that, they uplift the economic plight of all of these countries, and the whole region can prosper. It requires bold leadership. It requires execution. It requires forward foresight. If that is there, I think we will see an optimistic outcome.
Ms. Kendall, few remarks, last remarks. What are the significant ingredients, let's say, of a more peaceful Arab world?
Common vision. Everyone talking to everybody else for a common vision, and having probably international partners put pressure on our allies to adhere to that common vision. I'm thinking of places like the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea region, Yemen. So many players have competing visions for what they want as an end outcome, and that's got to stop, or we will end up in a very fragmented place.
So I'm going to conclude this panel discussion with the title Common Vision. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.